A very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord, and thank you for joining us for One on One. Our special guest is the Minister of Transport, Works and Water Resources, the Honorable Ian Gooding-Edghill. Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure, and good evening to you as well.
Now, you've been Minister for almost a year now, but one of the major issues that continues to plague government since coming to office and even before has been the issue of water. What is your ministry doing to alleviate water woes in places like St. Andrews, St. Joseph, St. Lucie, etc.?
Yes. Long before I became minister, the government of Barbados had made a commitment to make a substantial investment in the water supply and distribution platforms in Barbados. The government engineered a number of projects to enhance the water supply across Barbados. The Vineyard project, for example, at a cost of approximately $15 million, is meant to augment the supply of water to the residents of St. John and St. Joseph. That project is moving on, it's going well, and we anticipate within another 4 weeks that we should be up and running with the full capacity that we're expecting to pump from the Vineyard pumping station all the way through to St. John and St. Joseph. Now that will eliminate quite a few challenges that we've been encountering in that area. And we've had some challenges in that area. We also undertook to ensure that we maintain a consistent supply of water in other areas. For example, in the Bosque Bell area, where it effectively was an irritant. And residents in that area were unable to maintain a consistent supply of water. The government built a 700,000 gallon tank in the Bosque Bell area, even though the consumption in the area amongst about 200,000 gallons per day. So what we did there is to factor in a redundancy so that in the event that we had any challenges going forward, they would still be able to maintain that consistent supply of water. That tank is almost ready, and very shortly, residents will begin to see a consistent supply of water within the Bosque Bell area. We are also at the same time renovating a number of reservoirs. We had quite a few reservoirs that were broken, were in very bad condition. The government, again, through funding from central government, facilitated the upgrades to a number of reservoirs across Barbados. We also had a situation where the tank at Lodge Hill really had to be replaced, and the government set out to replace that tank, and we have a new tank to supplement the existing tank that we have at Lodge Hill. What we're also doing is that we have a St. Stephen's to Lodge Hill project, and that is meant to, again, augment supply. So we pump from Ionics, we will increase the supply of water through the Lodge Hill reservoir. But first it goes to St. Stephen's, then it goes to the Lodge Hill reservoir. And then from the Lodge Hill reservoir, we will then distribute the water through to Shop Hill, onto Apes Hill, and then into the Castle Grant area, which would then also help the eastern part of St. Joseph that had been experiencing some significant challenges with the supply of water. So those projects are ongoing. Obviously, it will make a substantial difference to the lives of customers, not only residential customers, but also commercial customers who depend on water. And we believe that with these projects as conceptualized, we will alleviate and certainly reduce a number of challenges that we have. I will say, however, that we still have an issue with the mains. The mains, they are longer and older than, they've been there for a number of years, and certainly older than we are. In some instances, we've had mains that are close to 100 years old. In other instances, maybe 65 plus years. So that has in itself posed a challenge. Now, those mains, as you would appreciate over the years, would have suffered deterioration. And what that presented to us was a challenge in respect of how we maintain the distribution lines in Barbados. We are working to ensure that we have a mains replacement project. If you go through, for example, the parish of St. John, you will see that we've replaced a significant number of mains in that area. We are also enhancing the distribution transmission mains as well. In St. Lucie, for example, where we're experiencing some discolored water. Now, when the water leaves the reservoir in St. Lucie, it is actually very clear. The challenge has been the mains. And once we fix those mains and we replace those mains, I should say, What will happen is that we will then have less discarded water going into the homes of residents in that area. We are working on that plan. We are going to make additional announcements very shortly in respect of the mains distributions, but we are and have adopted a strategic mains distribution program. So we have to change out the mains. However, the issue with the changing out of the mains is that it's a significant cost. You would and I think all Barbados knows that with the pandemic, government revenues would have been reduced, significantly reduced. And notwithstanding that, the government has maintained that commitment to ensure that we have mains distributions and that we have a strategic mains replacement policy. The challenge that we encounter is a simple infrastructure imbalance. The government came to office in 2018, found itself in a position whereby we had to repair the infrastructure. That imbalance in infrastructure has now caused us to spend millions of dollars, and we're making the right decisions to ensure that we fix a lot of what I refer to the infrastructure imbalance that ought not to have taken place. It will take us time, and we are grateful to especially customers of the Barbados Water Authority who've been very patient, but we recognize that we have to fix these problems, and we are working around the clock to fix these problems. A lot of the projects that we've undertaken, for example, I take you back to Vineyard. That project, we had contractors working late into the evening, and in other cases, we had them working very late into the night because we understand the urgency of getting these projects completed. We also, I must confess, we had the COVID situation, which caused us some delays. We had the ashfall, which also caused some delays with the project. But I'm happy to report that those projects are on track, and we are going to see an improvement in the water supply and distribution in Barbados.
Where are we with additional desal plants?
Yes, the government currently, we have a temporary desalination plant at Hope. That is done through another entity that is pumping water and augmenting water, I should say, to assist us. We are also repositioning additional temporary desalination plants in the north of Barbados to alleviate some of the challenges that we have in the north of Barbados. And we are currently undertaking a review to ensure we can look at permanent desalination plants in Barbados.
Now, during the BLP's report to the nation recently, the Minister in the Ministry of Water Resources, the Honorable Charles Griffith, he had indicated that 37 water tankers should be in the island in a few weeks' time. Can you give a further update to that?
Yes, actually some are on island at the moment. We are preparing to get them out of the Bridgetown port. That will help us in respect of our distribution platform. We anticipate within another 3 to 4 weeks that we should have all of the tankers on island.
In terms of the Barbados Water Authority now, how is the authority functioning? I know it was not making money for quite some time, having some difficulties with arrears, etc.
Yeah. Well, water infrastructure, if you know anything about utilities management, water is the most expensive utility service in any part of the world. When you look at the infrastructure costs, because it's underground, you don't necessarily recognize or realize it. The cost of means. The Barbados Water Authority doesn't have to call on the government for any financial assistance in respect of day-to-day operations. However, what the government has done and has made a significant commitment to is the capital expenditure program. The cash flows of the Barbados Water Authority simply wouldn't allow the Barbados Water Authority to fund its capital expenditure program. And that is where the government stepped in. And year after year, the government has made a substantial investment in the capital works program of the Barbados Water Authority. That is why we're able to, for example, secure additional tanks and change out reservoirs and repair reservoirs and assist us in the maintenance of systems that we have at the Barbados Water Authority, assist us in the laying of mains across the island. So that is what the government's commitment is to the Barbados Water Authority.
In terms of the arrears?
Well, yes, you will. I don't have the exact figure. I didn't walk with that information in my head today, sorry about that. But what I can tell you is that the Barbados Water Authority continues to make every effort to collect all outstanding arrears due. Obviously, we are faced with a pandemic where some persons would have been on shorter working hours, and that would, of course, had an impact. We're in a pandemic, and therefore we would definitely not disconnect water services to residents, because in a pandemic, you can't do that. That will be counterproductive.
Now, in a recent interview I had with Mr. Halliday from the BWA, he was saying that there's still an idea amongst Barbadians that Barbados is not a water scarce country, and that's leading to persons not really practicing conservation methods.
Well, I wouldn't say, well, put it this way. Barbados, I think our system is based on the aquifer. In effect, all the water filters down through to the limestone, all the way below the surface into the aquifer. We're able to pump millions of gallons of water, I think over 30 million gallons of water per day, to supply and augment water supply across the island. And now, having said that, we have to recognize that there's climate change and there are rainfall patterns that are changing. We have situations where, I think it was 2 years ago, we had the lowest rainfall on record, which would have affected, obviously, what we're able to pump. Now, we are going to be encouraging Barbadians to practice what we call water harvesting techniques in order to allow them to use non-potable water for irrigation and other purposes. And that's where we're going as a ministry. And very shortly we'll be making a major announcement in respect of how we go forward with non-potable water for recycling, in respect of how we assist persons. Now, part of the town planning process is that persons are required to have water tanks either underground or above ground. Part of the planning process allows, for example, for water tanks to be stored either above ground or underground. We're encouraging Barbadians to utilize some of that water for irrigation, which would then reduce, for example, the demand on water that we would have to pump from the aquifers.
There's the opinion that water tanks, they're still too expensive, especially the installation of them.
The government recognizes that this is a challenge for some householders, considering that with the pandemic and the effects of cash for some persons. What we are going to be doing, we will be announcing a program very shortly, which will allow residents to use the Barbados Water Authority facility, to tap into that facility in order to get water tanks and to have them fully powered, and then to repay the Water Authority over a given period of time. We are also going to be encouraging institutions to come to the assistance of those who can't afford the upfront costs through maybe a water care package, which will allow them to finance the purchase of water tanks.
Now, ever so often we get information about low levels at several reservoirs. How concerned are you about this seemingly recurring problem?
Well, it's been a problem that's been going on for some time. Part of the challenge is that we have to pump more water. Like I said, we have billions of water in our aquifer. And what we need to do is to pump more water, and we are well on our way to doing that. You also must be aware that we have the ionics, where they have the reverse osmosis process. That allows, for example, water to be put into the transmission mains and to be fed into several areas across Barbados. At this point in time, even though, yes, reservoir levels on occasions will become low, especially during drought and because of climatic change conditions, we are acutely aware of this, but we are taking steps to address the matter. We are looking at additional boreholes across the country. We are also looking at these desalination plants to address this issue. And once we have those addressed, then the issue of the levels within the reservoirs certainly would be addressed.
So another major part of your portfolio is transport. I'm going to start by looking at the Transport Board.
Sure.
How is that entity performing in terms of its profitability, especially in this COVID-19 environment?
Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get vibration. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function. Remove outdoor objects. Make sure that you went to the ATM. Stock up with water. Make sure you clean the guttering lot. What about canned food? Make sure you got some stock up in your room. Make sure you prop up the paling and tie down the roof. Let me start to prepare real soon. Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get vibration. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function.
Another major part of your portfolio is transport. I'm going to start by looking at the Transport Board.
Sure.
How is that entity performing in terms of its profitability, especially in this COVID-19 environment?
Good question. The Transport Board has come a long way. Since 2019, the Transport Board would have recorded about a loss of over $21 million on the GOP line. When I returned to the Transport Board, as chairman, and the Prime Minister asked me to serve there, we slashed it, and we slashed our losses to 11.5 million. We were well on our way to making an additional inroad into the deficit, and then COVID set in. In fact, we were on track to reduce it, as I recall, maybe from 11 million to almost 5.5 million. COVID stepped in, and as a result of that, we had our revenue shortfalls, which obviously had a corresponding impact. Now, the board has done a great job in reducing expenditure, notwithstanding the shortage of revenue. And the board continues to do very well in respect of the management of its finances. And passengers, even though we have challenges with the traffic, in terms of the passenger traffic, which will allow us to earn more revenue because of obviously the COVID rules that we have to follow with respect to 75% rule and seating capacity on the buses. So that's really hit us hard. Notwithstanding that, the board has also implemented several other measures. For example, we had existing Transport Board fleet with what you call a diesel-driven engine. We were able to install a new powertrain. As a result of the installation of the new powertrain engines, we were able to slash our diesel bill by over $2 million in one financial year. We also slashed the bill for parts as well. So we've realized significant gains there, and I continue to thank the board and management and staff for the outstanding job that they're doing there. Of course, you would appreciate that Transport Board is dear to my heart, having served before. Never thought I would return to be a chairman, but definitely when I returned, I recognized there were some opportunities, and we went to work on fixing those opportunities.
Your new electric buses, how are they performing? Well,
they continue to grace our highways, and I think as you drive around Barbados, you see them almost in every community at every turn. They've performed very well. I'm very pleased, and at this point, I need to thank the due diligence team that joined me, because we, as then chairman of the Transport Board, I led a due diligence team to ensure that what we were going to be procuring for Barbados, that we would have the appropriate bus, we call them units sometimes, for our roadways in Barbados. They're working very well. It is an excellent return on investment thus far. They are really luxurious. As you know, they have air conditioning, I call it air conditioned luxury, Wi-Fi. The operators are taking very good care of the units, and I'm very pleased about that. And I'm looking forward. We currently have 33 on island, and then we got an additional 2. And I'm looking forward to receipt of the next batch of electric buses.
The next batch, how many?
We have 14. They have already been shipped on the way to Barbados. I anticipate they should be in Barbados next month. And as soon as they land, obviously with all the setup arrangements that we have to go through, we will have additional 14 electric buses on our roadways. And I think that the feedback from the traveling public, community feedback, has been excellent. There are people who come over to me sometimes, and they thank me for having electric buses. As you would appreciate, it's clean energy, so you don't have the exhaust systems that we once had. And they continue to be hit with the public, and I'm really pleased with the performance of the electric buses, and we know that we are taking very good care of them in terms of the maintenance, which is also a very, very important issue in respect of electric buses. And I'm happy to say that they've really turned out to be the success that I knew, along with the members of the team, when we went and we visited on our site visits to ensure that we were buying the best for Barbados. I'm also pleased to let Barbadians know that we have the largest fleet of electric buses in the Caribbean, and that's the truth. We will have, by the next month, we will have 49 electric buses on the road. And our model has been very closely watched by other Caribbean islands who've contacted the Transport Board and have asked them for advice. And that is ongoing. And we have to help our brothers and sisters within the Caribbean, because they have never been involved in such an extensive electric bus program. So it's a first for Barbados, first for the region, but certainly when it comes to electric mobility, we're up there with the developing world.
Let's look at the Transport Augmentation Program, TAP. How has that been performing?
very, very well. We've had a situation where, for the first time, we've been able to enfranchise former workers of the Transport Board who took a separation package and elected to get into the TAP program. We've also had others who wanted to get into the program. We've had in the first batch 150 TAP permits, and those have been fully utilized, and they are complementing the services of the Transport Board. They're really doing an excellent job. They've helped us to maintain a more reliable bus service. In terms of scheduling, they've also helped us with the scheduling. But the most important thing is that in addition to helping us at the Transport Board to move commuter traffic, what they've also done is that they've come into the terminals. And when they come into the terminals, they help us to move the flow of passengers. And that is required across Barbados. So they're doing well. I continue to thank the members the operators who participate in the TAP program for everything they do, because truly they've helped us to maintain that reliable service that we need to have.
Let's look at the public service vehicles. There's been some level of complaints amongst operators that they're not getting enough support from government during this time. How do you respond?
Well, I'm not sure which quarter that's coming from, but what I will say is that the government, for example, take the TAP program, for example. The government made a policy decision. If you come into TAP, you can get a duty-free vehicle, and you can also have access to financing. Now, I accept that with COVID, there would have been some revenue reduction because of the rules. However, I must say that the transport sector in Barbados is worth over $200 million. And nobody stays in business if they're not making money. And I can assure you that notwithstanding what's happening with COVID, that the operators still continue to do well. And honestly, I think once we get back to where we were before, I think the operators will return to that same level of profitability that they're used to. But I will say that it is my judgment that the sector, notwithstanding the challenges that they're faced with, continue to do well.
You recently announced plans for the establishment of a mass transit authority. Describe it and how it could actually help to improve the transportation sector.
Sure. The Barbados government, over time, embarked on a series of initiatives. Certainly, Barbados Labour Party government back in 1955 established the Transport Board. The establishment of the Transport Board allowed transport systems to be put in place. Then, when the late Tom Adams became Prime Minister, he expanded and gave what I refer to as an opportunity for enfranchisement to several of what we refer to now as private service vehicle owners. And that led to the expansion, the very rapid expansion of the PSVs as we refer to them today. When Prime Minister Arthur was in office, he expanded and bought over 250 units because the transport sector was struggling. That had a price tag as well. Now, this Barbados Labour Party under Prime Minister Morley is taking it to its next logical step, and that is to enfranchise it. The cost of running the Transport Board is a significant one. It has not only operating expenditure that outstrips its revenue, passenger revenue, it also has significant expenditure on the capital side because you have to buy buses and they aren't cheap. We also have the wear and tear and maintenance of the buses over time. The Mass Transit Authority is to advance what the Barbados Labour Party started under the late Right Excellent Sir Herbert Grantley Adams in propelling an enfranchisement opportunity for Barbadians. And that is what the Barbados Mass Transit Authority is. It's about creating enfranchisement opportunities for Barbadians, for ordinary Barbadians, I may stress. Now, with that in mind, that will give, for example, persons who never had a stake in public transport to get involved in public transport. In other words, the government will be retreating and removing its footprint as an operator in a mass transit and will be allowing through enfranchisement to allow others to participate. At the same time, government will maintain regulation of the sector. And that is as simple as I can put the Barbados Mass Transit to you. We are still in discussions with our stakeholders, and we are going to continue. So if you think, for example, I'm a bit cautious and cagey, it's because I don't want to disrespect the process that we've started.
Let's look at Highway 1. Some have argued that that rehabilitation project is taking way too long to be completed.
Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get vibration. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function. Remove outdoor objects. Make sure that you went to the ATM. Stock up with water. Make sure you clean the guttering lot. What about canned food? Make sure you got some stock up in your room. Make sure you prop up the paling and tie down the roof. Let me start to prepare real soon. Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another, get vibration. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function.
Let's look at Highway 1. Some have argued that that rehabilitation project is taking way too long to be completed.
The Highway 1 project, and I'll take Barbadians back, that Highway 1 has been a state of disrepair for several years. It had to be done. It is one of the most heavily trafficked highways on the island. What the government did, they took a very bold decision to ensure that we reconstruct 6.5 kilometers of the existing Highway 1. That is from the Frank World Roundabout to Seaview at the bottom of Lang Grove. It is perhaps, for me in my 10 months as a government minister, it's been probably the most complex, most challenging project that I've had to oversee during my tenure as a minister. For the ministry officials who've done an excellent job, for them, again, it's perhaps one of the most complex projects. And I'll explain why. We took the decision to move away from the concept of having mains on one side of the road. So what we did on the Highway 1 project is to move to a situation where we have utility services on both sides. That is the land side and the seaside. So we have gas mains, we have provision going forward for the future, for electric ducts, and we also have Barbados Water Authority mains on both sides. What that means is that in the event there is a break in any of the services, utility services, that the simple challenge would be that you don't have to cut across the road as has been done in the past, and you don't have to go and dig up freshly paved road. What we will do, because we have manholes insulated at different junctures, we'll be able to isolate the challenge and go in and do a quick repair and reinstatement without impacting the highway. The other significant thing about that area is the introduction of footpaths and drainage systems. In that area, it was very difficult to walk. And we also had, we know in Barbados, we have persons who visit Barbados who have some disabilities. And we had to make provision for those as well. But I would invite you and all Barbadians to take a walk from the Sir Frank World Roundabout all the way through to Lime Grove, and you will see that you have footpaths on both sides of the road. Some of the challenges that we encounter, and I'll remind the public as well, we started the project November 2nd last year. And during that period, we also had to make allowances for some challenges that we would have encountered. For example, we had rainfall. We had about 3 weeks of rainfall that impacted the project. We also had the ashfall. We also had the national pause. And then we also had to close for the traditional Christmas New Year period. So we would have lost within that time at least 8 weeks. So November to the end of May is approximately 28 weeks. And we would have lost about 8 weeks. So we only had 20 weeks of productive time on the highway. But some of the fundamental challenges there is that you don't have a lot of exit routes on that major highway. So the contractors had to cope with the traffic flowing through. Yes, there were some diversions, but they had to cope with the traffic flowing through because you still have people living in the area and they had to get to work. We also had the challenge where, and perhaps some people wouldn't think this, we had so much hard rock on that highway. One would not have thought that with its proximity to the ocean, that you would have such significant hard rock. And the contractors had to go through and cut through that. And I'm pleased with the pace that they had to cut through that. It appears as though it's been very long, but to cut through that hard rock, if you were to see it, and we actually have footage of it, if you were to see that and what the excavators had to do within that area, I think you would recognize that it was a very difficult undertaking for the contractors. Now, in addition to that, we had to move rather gingerly on the project. And I explain why. We have fiber optic cables. Yes, we had ground penetrating radar in the area. And notwithstanding the ground penetrating radar, there were some areas where, obviously, I don't think some utility companies knew that they had utilities in certain locations. So the contractors had to move rather gingerly, because if they had struck any of the major fiber optic cables going through there, the entire West Coast and other parts of Barbados would have been shut down and they would have had no internet. Commerce, electronic commerce would have ground to a halt, and we had to be very mindful of that. So we took all that into consideration. But I'm pleased and also at certain areas, certain junctures, you also had springs going underground. And the contractors had to navigate that. They had to pump water and they had to restore it. But notwithstanding that, when you look and see what we've accomplished, if you look at the stretch from Sandy Lane all the way through to Seaview, it's already paved. Section 5 is completed. Section 4 is almost finished. The section from the Frank Worrell roundabout going north just before the Waves Hotel, that's finished. And I expect over the weekend that we will have even more paving done. So the project is coming to an end, but I want to thank the residents and certainly the owners of businesses within the area for their patience and their understanding. I also want to thank the pedestrians and motorists as well for what they had to put up with over the duration of the activities. But one thing I can say to them is, as they know, when the road is finished, they will have perhaps the most modern highway in Barbados with the most modern utility services. And I know it has been time consuming, but I'm confident that this will be a wonderful opportunity for Barbadians to see that Barbadians, the over 500 Barbadians who went to work and worked on that project, that they'll be able to see that Barbadians did an excellent job in modernizing that stretch of highway. And that's the first phase, I might add, of the Highway 1 project.
Is it still within budget?
It is still within budget. The project manager who's responsible for the site assured me that it remains within budget. Obviously, the QS and the teams work together, and they provide the minister with regular updates as to what is happening on the project. And every week I receive a report from the project team as to where we are, and it's very much on budget.
No, that's Highway 1. The state of many of the island's roads, they're a headache for many motorists. What are you doing?
Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another against vibration. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function. Remove outdoor objects. Make sure that you're went to the ATM. Stock up with water. Make sure you clean the guttering, Lord. What about canned food? Make sure you got some stock up in your room. Make sure you prop up the paling and tie down the roof. Let me start to prepare real soon. Let me begin preparations. It's hurricane season. Let me sit down and reason. Let me secure a nation. Know your shelters, Bajan. Help out one another against vibration. Develop emergency community plans so that we could function.
No, that's Highway 1. The state of many of the island's roads, they're a headache for many motorists. What are you doing?
Well, I can tell you what I've done, and I'll also tell you what I'm going to do. Look, I'll take you back to what I referred to earlier as broken infrastructure. Again, the road infrastructure, there was a significant imbalance. Yes, the roads had deteriorated over time. We came to office recognizing that we had to repair the roads. And I think we've done a good job thus far. Still a lot of work to do. I will tell you, from October last year to the end of the financial year, we did almost 60 roads across Barbados. And Barbadians are beginning to see, and they're certainly calling the ministry, they call me occasionally and they thank me and the government for what we've been able to do in respect of the roadways. I'll take you, for example, to an area off Deacons, not too far from the cemetery wall at Westbury. That road was in very bad condition. It was in bad condition for a number of years. When you drive past that now, you'll be driving on one of the smoothest road surfaces in Barbados. And that is but one example. The areas, for example, Todd's to Four Roads. The road was bad.
I know that well.
It was bad. We went in there and we fixed it. All right. There's several other areas within the urban corridor and in the rural areas as well that we have fixed, and we've done several roads. We are going to continue. We are going to do more roads in Barbados. We are in a pandemic. Yes, government revenues obviously would be constrained because of the lack of economic activity on the island due to the pandemic. But that will not stop us, and certainly has not stopped a commitment from the Minister of Finance, who's the Prime Minister, from ensuring that we have quality road surfaces across Barbados. And we are going beyond what we have, because we have a budget within the ministry that we manage for highways and tenantry roads in the Scotland district. But beyond that, we are going further. And we have now, we are about to conclude negotiations to ensure that we have $230 million being spent in the Scotland district. That is the largest, and I went back and I checked this, it's the largest single project to be undertaken by a government within the fiscal space. And that project will see a number of roads within the Scotland district. And within the Scotland district, we refer to St. John, St. Joseph, St. Andrew, and St. Thomas. And those roads have been identified already. We have 30 roads and bridges that we are going to fix. And we are going to restore them because it's absolutely necessary that we do that. So the residents in those areas like White Hill and Spa Hill and St. Thomas and all the roads leading to a lot of the attractions in that area that allow us to have greater economic activity and traffic, people getting to and from their homes as well, will be significantly enhanced. And we've started some work already. We're doing the boreholes to make sure we test the soil quality so the engineers know what application they will have to apply to ensure that we have a very stable road infrastructure in that area. That will get going very shortly, and the residents will see a significant improvement. Beyond that, the government is also negotiating a major loan with the Latin American Development Bank, as we commonly refer to as CAF. That's another $100 million that will be spread out over time. And that will also see a number of roads across the island being repaired. And I must say to Barbadians, we inherited road infrastructure that had deteriorated. I know they want their roads fixed. We're working around the clock to get it done. But I must also say that within 3 years, the ministry is very proud, and I have to thank the officials of the ministry and the contractors involved for the quality of work and also for leading the project. But I must also remind Barbadians that we can't repair a decade of deteriorated roads within 3 years. But we are getting there, and we're getting there quickly. And I'm very proud to be leading the ministry that understands that road quality deteriorated. The ministry officials are very excited, and Barbadians, I know, are pleased with the progress to date with our road infrastructure. So we will come up with Highway 1. We have, like I said to you, we've done close to 60 roads within the October last year to last March. We also have the roads that we're going to do in the Scotland district for all the people and residents in the rural areas of Barbados. And in addition to that, we will have a significant infrastructure and roads with the CAF project that I just explained.
Using the Highway 1 rehabilitation project model, how closely will your ministry now be working with utility companies going forward?
Yes, any major road works we undertake in Barbados, the Deputy Chief Technical Officer within the ministry would also liaise with all the major utility companies in Barbados. So we let them know we're going into Scotland District so that they can get their equipment ready and all the services that they have to make available to ensure that we don't go back and dig up the road. So we communicate with them quite often. There's a weekly utilities meeting that I chair, and that's part of our remit in terms of ensuring we have proper coordination as we go forward. Take for example the West. I go back to Highway 1. We will now have an opportunity to have on the provision of underground electrical supply. We no longer, and it will take some time. I will caution Barbadians, it will take some time, but soon we will no longer have all the utility wires above ground. We will have them underground. And that is why the project, like I said, at Highway 1 represents perhaps the most modern approach to highway reconstruction in respect of the provision of underground means. Of course, in Warrens, there's provision for that as well. But we're in a hurricane belt. And if we're in a hurricane belt, we have to move gradually to move to an underground provision of underground utilities, especially electricity. So we're getting there. It will take time. You can't fix everything within a 5-year period. It will take time. We are mindful of that. But I think Barbadians will, when they realize the amount of work that we're doing, they will be very happy that the government is very forward-thinking in terms of approach, in terms of how it's advancing its agenda to ensure that we plan for the future. Because the government is not planning for today. The government is planning for more than 25 years down the road. And that is why we have come with the approach that is modernize the infrastructure and keep it going in such a way that it will serve the country proud over the next 50 plus years.
Okay, so the hurricane season has just started. Let's look at the drains. Are the majority of them now clear from ash and can withstand this hurricane season, whatever may come?
Yes, and thank you for asking the question. The government, as you know, embarked on a program to engage a number of Barbadians to work to assist us with the ashfall cleanup. In addition to removing ash from the roadways, what we've also done is that we've engaged some of those workers to help us remove ash from a lot of the culverts and the box drains and canals across Barbados, and that's currently ongoing, and that is what they're doing. In addition to that, they're removing weeds from the side of the roads that would not cause us to have any situation where the water goes in an area other than where it ought to go. In addition to that, the drainage unit, prior to the commencement of the hurricane season and long before in the last financial year, the drainage department undertook a major program that is to clean wells across Barbados and also to create what they refer as detention and retention ponds. That is, allow, rather than having the water to run off and flood key areas, they created a pond, and that will help to retain the water. In addition to that, it will prevent some of the water from flowing naturally into the ocean, and it will allow the water to go into the what we call the aquifer system underground and help us to replenish our aquifer. So they've done a tremendous amount of work cleaning wells all across Barbados and retention and detention ponds and some swales as well. So they've done a lot of work. Now there's still more work to be done. A lot more work to be done, I'll admit, but within the constraints of the budget, we've done, I think, a tremendous job. We are also clearing all the outfalls because we have to make sure that the outfalls aren't blocked. That would allow water to flow and take its natural path. We've also cleared a significant number of water courses all across Barbados. So I'm pleased with the progress. We've also had interventions in key areas. For example, I undertook site visits to, flood-prone areas, Warners, Goodland as well. We also had a look recently at the lowlands area. So those areas where you have low-lying flooding, we've gone in, we've started cleaning the wells, and hopefully that will help us. But like I said, there's a lot of work. We can't clean all the wells within 1 year, certainly can't. And there's some wells where we had, some areas where we had to sink new wells as well, and that process has commenced. So I'm pleased with the progress, the works of the drainage department, and I think that it's ongoing. It hasn't stopped. As I speak to you, they're still doing the work. But for us, we had to get rid of the ash as well, because the ash could have caused us serious problems in respect of the culverts, and the drains and canals across Barbados.
And Barbadians also have a responsibility as well. Many times people cut the grass and they leave it at the side of the road. That goes into the drains and other debris.
Yes, what we did is that we started a PSA, the ministry started a PSA, a public service announcement campaign, to encourage persons. In fact, there was a jingle along with it to allow persons, and it's been all over the media, encouraging persons to do exactly what you identified, allow them to work with us. I'm also very shortly going to be announcing a program, Help Us to Help You. And that program will feature a presentation on how to help us as residents, how to help the ministry to protect the drainage systems and the water courses that we have across Barbados and our well infrastructure. So we will be piloting that program very shortly. What we're also doing in terms of planning for the future and building out our infrastructure, we're also developing within the ministry standard operating procedures. So for example, if this to be a road project, it'll be a set of procedures that contractors will have to follow in Barbados. And we're building out standard operating procedures across the ministry for all divisions within the ministry to ensure that we have standards. Because one of the key things in order to ensure that we get the best bang for a buck, as we refer to it in the private sector, is to ensure that we have a program that is sustainable. And the standard operating procedures that we have will allow us to have sustainable roads and sustainable infrastructure. And we're doing that. We're building that platform of standard operating procedures across all divisions within the ministry.
Minister, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I would just like to thank Barbadians for their patience. There's a lot of roadworks to be done across the island, and it's very important that I thank them. I'd like to thank the businesses for their cooperation along with the roadworks. In respect of water, I know we have been challenged in key districts in Barbados, but at long last, we are beginning to see relief very gradually, and I'm confident that we will continue to deliver to the Barbadian public. It's as Barbadians would probably know, it's a very big ministry with a lot of responsibilities. I'm going to be on a job 10 months. I'm absolutely enjoying it, and I go to work every day with the one mindset: how can I improve the lives of Barbadians? How can I make life better for Barbadians? And that is what Minister Griffiths and I go to work along with the team at the ministry, focusing on a daily basis. It has been challenging, but I will also say it's been very, very enjoyable, and I'm enjoying it.
Minister, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
You're welcome. Thanks.
And that was the Minister of Transport, Works and Water Resources, the Honorable Ian Gooding-Edghill. I am Lisa Lord, and this has been One on One.